things got a little spicy and unrivaled, which you got to love to see, especially when it's between Angel Reese and Queen Fee. Napheesa Collier and Reese got into it a little bit, in the midst of a game between the Lunar Owls and Rose BC. And when Collier hit the game winner, she had something to say in Angel's direction. The jawing wasn't picked up by microphones and was clearly in the spirit of competitive fire. But let's just say, for all the points that Collier is averaging in Unrivaled, she seemed to savor those two quite a bit.
Angel Reese entered the game with her trademark confidence, but by the end, there wasn't much to boast about. It wasn't just an off night. It was the kind of showing that had everyone doubting her skills. Botched layups, careless turnovers, and reckless fouls. It was a total collapse on national TV. And if that wasn't bad enough, Napheesa Collier made sure to drive the point home. Reese isn't prepared for the big stage just yet.
They'd gone back and forth a little bit, Collier and Reese, throughout the game. And of course, the Rose BC was the only team to beat Collier's Owls this season. That was the game that Reese did the hootie-hoo afterwards. And like I said, back and forth in this one. But I think basketball fans are going to be thrilled to see that fight on display. Obviously, two big WNBA stars, and to see them really care about the outcome of the game, in this case, it going in Collier's favor.
And it's not like this was the first time Angel Reese struggled in a big moment. In fact, this game felt eerily similar to her previous letdowns, just amplified under brighter lights. Let's take a step back because Reese's struggles didn't start here. They've been brewing for a while. And this was simply the breaking point. The issue with playing the villain role without the game to back it up is clear. From the moment Angel Reese stepped onto the WNBA stage, she embraced being the antagonist. At first, it worked. The media ran with it. Fans picked sides, and she became one of the most talked about names in women's basketball. But the problem with being the villain is simple. If you're not winning, you're just making noise. And that's when things fall apart. Look at someone like Draymond Green in the NBA. He talks trash, plays aggressively, and gets under his opponent's skin. But the key difference? Draymond has championship rings, Defensive Player of the Year awards, and is regarded as one of the smartest defenders of his time. Angel Reese doesn't have that, at least not yet. And when you act like the toughest player in the league but keep getting outperformed, people start seeing through the facade. This game against Napheesa Collier was a perfect example of that, how Napheesa executed flawlessly, while Reese crumbled under pressure.
Slow your team's momentum, so just go ahead and find another way to get to the basket. Looking to go to 12-1. Rose on the comeback and a win would clinch the 2 seed. Reese.
Collier didn't need to show off. She didn't have to talk trash. She simply let her game do the talking. Every time Reese tried to get physical, Collier calmly answered with a basket. Every time Reese attempted to disrupt her, Collier stayed composed and made her pay for it. By the end of the game, it was obvious who the superior player was. And it wasn't even close. It was the type of performance that distinguishes elite athletes from those who are just well-known. And let's be honest, this wasn't the first time Reese has struggled against a more skilled opponent. She has a tendency to rely on overpowering her matchups. But when that approach fails, she doesn't seem to have an alternative. That's exactly what happened here. This wasn't just an isolated bad night. It was part of a recurring trend. Back in college, Reese dominated when facing tough but less skilled post players. But whenever she was matched against refined, talented bigs who could neutralize her aggressive style, she started to falter. Think back to LSU's game against South Carolina. Reese had difficulty handling Aaliyah Boston, who was not only strong but also highly skilled and fundamentally sound. Or when she faced Stanford's Cameron Brink, another player with elite footwork and a high basketball IQ. Reese's usual strategies fell apart, and she struggled to adapt. Now, the same flaws are surfacing in the WNBA. In college, she could rely on her physicality to dominate. But at the professional level, that approach no longer works. Opponents are stronger, smarter, and more experienced. And when Reese can't simply overpower defenders, the question becomes, what else does she have? Based on this performance, the answer isn't looking promising. One of the biggest issues in Reese's game is her limited offensive ability. If she can't muscle her way to the rim, she doesn't have many other options. She's not a reliable shooter, she's not an elite passer, and her footwork in the post is inconsistent at best. That's a significant problem because the best bigs in the WNBA have multiple ways to score. Breanna Stewart can shoot, drive, and post up, making her a versatile threat. A'ja Wilson initially relied on scoring in the post, but expanded her game with a mid-range shot and improved playmaking ability over time. Reese, on the other hand, hasn't demonstrated that kind of growth. That's why performances like this happen. When her first option is taken away, she has few reliable counters, and it's becoming more evident at the next level. Every player has off nights, even superstars. But this wasn't just a poor game. It was a performance that put all of Angel Reese's weaknesses on full display for everyone to see.
The Lunar Owls crushed the Rose BC, and Angel, well, she did some rather interesting things on the court. And Napheesa Collier, well, look now, one thing we could say, they are not afraid of Angel Reese and the Rose BC, because after hitting the game-winning shot, Napheesa had some real words towards Angel Reese.
It wasn't just that Angel Reese played poorly, it was how she handled it. She got frustrated, forced plays, and became even more reckless instead of adjusting. That's what separates good players from great ones. Great players adapt when things aren't going their way. They find ways to contribute even when they're struggling. But Reese? She kept making things worse. That's why this game is facing such heavy criticism. It wasn't just about the stats. It was about how she mentally unraveled when the pressure was on. Like it or not, Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark will always be compared. They were the biggest stars in college basketball, entered the WNBA with massive expectations, and now the gap between them is starting to show. Clark has already proven that she can adapt. She's playing smarter, making adjustments, and finding ways to impact the game even when she isn't scoring. Reese, however, is still relying on the same tactics that worked in college, and they're not translating at the professional level. That's why people are saying Caitlin Clark is the future of the WNBA, while Reese is struggling to keep up. If Reese continues playing like this, things are going to get tough. Coaches are watching. They see the pattern. If she doesn't start making changes, she might find herself getting fewer minutes and losing the trust of her team. The WNBA is too competitive for players who refuse to evolve, and right now, Reese isn't evolving. She's making the same mistakes, falling into the same habits, and showing no real signs of improvement. If she doesn't fix that soon, she might go from being a headline name to an afterthought. This wasn't just a loss, it was an exposure. Napheesa Collier didn't just beat Angel Reese, she showed the entire league how to stop her. Now every team will be watching this game and taking notes. If Reese wants to be more than just a social media personality, she needs to make changes fast. Right now, she looks more like an overhyped player than a future superstar. One of the biggest reasons Angel Reese has been under such intense scrutiny is simple. The media built her up as a superstar before she had actually proven herself at the professional level. In today's basketball world, hype can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, it gets you brand deals, millions of social media followers, and a built-in fan base before you've even stepped on a WNBA court. On the other hand, it makes every mistake 10 times worse. If Reese was just another rookie trying to find her way, this game against Napheesa Collier wouldn't be a big deal. It would just be a bad night, something to learn from. But because the media hyped her up as the next big thing, every single one of her struggles is put under a microscope. That's where the problem starts. It's not just that Reese had a bad game. It's that her flaws were already there, and the media ignored them because they wanted a new star. But basketball doesn't work like that. You can't just talk someone into being great. At some point, you have to back it up on the court. The WNBA is in a strange position with Angel Reese right now. On one hand, they love that she brings attention to the league. Let's be real. Reese is one of the most talked about players, even if she isn't one of the best yet. That's good for business. But on the other hand, there's only so long you can sell hype before people start demanding results. And right now, the results aren't there. If she keeps struggling, teams will start making decisions. The WNBA is a league with limited roster spots. You don't get to just hang around if you aren't producing. Look at past WNBA players who entered the league with hype but didn't improve fast enough. Some of them were out of the league in just a few years. Reese's name recognition might buy her some time, but at some point, she has to start delivering. No team wants a player who causes distractions but doesn't contribute to winning. One of the most unexpected developments right now is the divide between Angel Reese and her own fan base. When she first entered the league, her fans were ride or die. They defended her, hyped her up, and made excuses for her struggles. But now, some of those same fans are starting to turn. Why? Because it's getting harder and harder to ignore the mistakes. When you're missing wide-open layups, turning the ball over 7 times, and flopping for no reason, even your biggest supporters start questioning things. The real issue is that she isn't handling the criticism well. After this game, instead of saying, "I need to be better," she went into defensive mode. She blamed the refs. She acted like the media was out to get her. It's that Collier outplayed her. It's that Collier made Reese look out of place. That's a problem because Collier isn't even considered one of the absolute best in the league. If Reese struggled this much against her, what's going to happen when she faces players like Brianna Stewart, Aja Wilson, or Elena Delle Donne? Spoiler alert, it's not going to be pretty. His is where the WNBA will force Reese to improve, or she won't last long. In college, she could bully weaker competition. But in the pros, you need skill, not just energy. Right now, her skill level isn't there. It's impossible to talk about Angel Reese without bringing up Caitlin Clark because, whether people like it or not, they will always be linked. And right now, Clark is pulling away fast. Clark is already showing massive improvement in her decision-making, shooting efficiency, and passing. She's quickly figuring out how to adapt her game to the pro level. Reese, on the other hand, is still making the same mistakes from college. The difference between them is becoming clear. Clark is evolving into a franchise player, while Reese is stuck in the same place. If she doesn't start catching up, she's going to get left behind. The big question now is, can Angel Reese turn this around? Absolutely, but it's going to require real work. She needs to develop better footwork, a consistent mid-range shot, and the ability to make smarter decisions on the court. She also needs to adjust her mentality. Right now, she plays with too much emotion and not enough control. If she can fix that, she can still become a great player. But if she keeps making excuses instead of making improvements, she's going to end up as just another overhyped player who never lived up to expectations. The WNBA isn't college basketball. It's faster. It's tougher. It's unforgiving. And right now, Angel Reese is learning that the hard way. If she wants to be a real star, she has to start fixing her weaknesses.